The first thing you feel is cold. Not the sharp kind, but a steady, soaking chill that comes from kneeling by a creek before the light has learned how to be warm. The pan in your hands is a shallow circle of patience. You tip it, swirl, and let the water carry away a thin layer of silt. Your breath hangs in front of you like small flags. Somewhere behind you, a camp coughs itself awake. You told yourself this would be simple. Arrive in California, find a bend in the river, trade effort for fortune. You believed that even if you couldn't last a month, surely you could last a day. Now the day stands in front of you, tall and unworried, and it is already asking what you're willing to pay. You arrived last night, when the road felt more rumor than earth. The town is a sudden thing: canvas ribs, plank sidewalks, a saloon that smells like fresh-cut pine, and yesterday's smoke. A hand-painted board promised rooms by the night, smaller letters adding, "Bring your own blanket." You spread your bedroll across 2 nailed benches and slept in the draft that comes free with every doorframe. When you woke, your shoulders ached from practicing humility. Your debt is small enough to carry and heavy enough to matter. You owe for a shovel, for a dented pan, for a shared corner of a tent. By sundown, you must pay or move along. You don't know where along goes. You don't ask. You just step to the creek and kneel where the water refuses to care about your plans. The pan is a clock. Each swirl is a second. You keep time with your wrists. Gravel clicks against tin. The creek speaks in patient syllables. The world narrows to water and breath, and the little leather poke at your belt, where a few glittering promises pretend to be security. Color shows. Not much, just a dust that pretends to be gold until it is wiped away by blinking. Your fingers sting, then go silent. A man in a red scarf steps into the edge of your vision. He hums a tune he never finishes, scoops his pan with hands that have known colder mornings than this. Farther down, he says, without looking, "Bend holds better. Bend also holds other things." The tune resumes, and he moves away as if the river had the right to guide him like a string. You try the bend because hope is heavier than advice. The mud there is stamped with 100 stories. Boots, bare feet, a heel dug in at the moment someone found something and forgot how to stand. You feel watched by footprints that learned more than you have. You shape a small prayer by doing the work anyway. Fill, swirl, tilt, let go. The bend gives you flecks, then takes them back with the same motion. You tell yourself to be patient. Patience, it turns out, is also heavy. By mid-morning, the town has woken into its market voice. The street is a river of people. The river is a street of stones. Behind you, on higher ground, a tent brags, banking and exchange. The letters are neat, the doorway dark, the counter bright. You decide to walk past it at noon, to measure honesty by the length of its shadow. For now, you keep the creek in your hands. The water keeps your worries obedient and small. Your back becomes a rope. A boy wanders past with a bucket and a sales pitch. Fetch the doctor? 2 bits if he's home, 1 if he's not. You shake your head. The boy shrugs like a man older than both of you. You pause to flex stiff fingers. Every time you lift your head, the camp rearranges itself. Canvas snaps in the wind. A new sign appears on a post. Scales honest as Sunday, and you wonder which Sunday the painter meant. A woman crosses to the water with a tin cup, fills it, and holds it to a fevered forehead back in her tent. You watch the way her hand shakes, then steadies. You don't know her, but you add her to the sum of things that matter here. Noon arrives without asking your permission. Hunger taps a quiet rhythm inside your ribs. The street offers bread at a price you'd call a joke if the baker would laugh with you. A barrel-chested man offers to weigh your dust for free, then lists the fees for everything that happens before and after the weighing. Another stall promises fair conversion to coin, and the word fair costs more than you're used to. A ledger lies open like a tongue at the banking and exchange. The clerk's smile tells you he can count faster than you can blink. His scales needle twitches, then hops, pleased with itself for landing just shy of generous. You ask what it costs to walk away with coin. The clerk answers in a tone that markets itself as friendly. His numbers are true in a way truth shouldn't be. You nod, though you don't like agreeing with arithmetic that encourages you to eat less. Back at the creek, the sky begins to collect weather. Clouds stack slow as furniture. The air tastes like an iron nail. You work because work is the only answer you have that isn't a sentence. When the pan gleams with its brief little constellations, you imagine them holding still long enough to change your day. But gold is a restless thing in a pan, and so are your hopes. The man in the red scarf hums his way back to you. He carries a tin cup that seems heavier than it should be. "You knew?" he asks. You admit it. He nods, like the river already told him. "There's a place off the lane," he says, "where they respect quantity. 2 small pokes can be 1 large rate." He glances at the bank tent, then back to your hands. "I've got a favor they owe me. Not a big one. Not free, either." You don't say yes. You don't say no. You keep working because the creek respects verbs. The red scarf hums away, and the bend keeps offering almost. Rain begins, not as spectacle, but as a habit. The town grows a damp patience. Roofs that were confident an hour ago discover a draft they forgot to mention. A fiddler tests the air outside the saloon, then retreats as if the melody is somewhere drier. A cough travels from one tent to another like a thread. You pass a dipper to a stranger with a fever. The stranger's partner whispers thank you as if water itself could be borrowed luck. By mid-afternoon, the road and the creek agree to be cousins. Your boots learn new complaints. A man raises his voice about raised prices. Someone else raises a hand to calm him and remembers too late there's nothing to hold. You tuck your poke deeper at your belt, not because you're rich, but because poverty is easiest to lose. You promised yourself you'd test a different scale at dusk. The one in the saloon. The one a traveler said would read down to the smile, until tomorrow, when a new rule would make that smile smaller. Promises like that keep the hours pointed in a direction. You pull one more pan from the water and imagine its contents changing your choices. They don't. Evening doesn't fall here. It spreads. Lanterns bloom in windows and tent flaps. The clerk at the bank tent lights his with a look of triumph. The ledger turns a warmer color and a colder face. You're tired enough to understand the logic of selling your dust into patience you can eat. You're stubborn enough to hesitate. The red scarf finds you just as the street learns how to be shadow. Now's best, he says. Not because it's good, because tomorrow is worse. You study his hands as if trust is written on knuckles. The splits in his skin are clean. His pan is dented in honest places. He points his chin down the lane to a counter inside a dry room. They like numbers that start heavy, he says. We can be one number tonight. You walk with him, because a day will take more than a person if the person refuses to ask for help. The back counter is a small ceremony. The scale sits like a judge who thinks laughter is a misdemeanor. The clerk behind it recognizes the red scarf with the kind of smile people save for debts they can finally balance. Your combined dust pours like an argument. The needle dances to a number you can respect, then steps back as if embarrassed by its own optimism. The clerk writes. He talks about rates and reasons. He subtracts a favor the way a man removes a splinter, gently, then with a story about what could have gone worse. When he counts out coin, you feel relief behave like warmth. It spreads to your shoulders first. It tells your stomach that supper might be more than the idea of supper. You thank the red scarf, who shrugs in a way that says debt and kindness are cousins too. You split the coin with him, neither of you perfectly satisfied, both of you less afraid than an hour ago. You pay for your corner of the tent. The owner nods with something like fondness and something like inventory. You buy bread that crackles and a piece of meat that makes your teeth think of better days. The rain becomes a rumor you can tolerate. The creek becomes a sound you can almost call gentle. Night here is stitched from many small noises. A horse clears its throat. A bottle meets the floor and argues quietly about it. Cards speak in soft clicks from the saloon. Someone sings a verse to a hymn that never finds the next line. You slide into your bedroll and wait for sleep to come over like a blanket without holes. Your body is a list of aches that have not yet learned their lessons. Your mind counts coins until the numbers turn into shapes. You keep your poke near your ribs, even though it holds almost nothing now. Habit is a kind of guard. Footsteps drift past, stop, return. You remember that canvas is not a wall, it is a suggestion. The footsteps move on. Your breath untangles. The night grows a little kind. Sometime between one thought and another, the red scarf hums again, but only in your memory. You see the needle pause, the numbers proposed and then accepted, the paper that proves a deal can be honorable and still feel like a compromise. You understand something that everyone here learns by the second evening. Survival is a price you pay in small change, all day, for the permission to try again tomorrow. You wake to gray honesty. The world is the same shape, just slightly colder from being real. The creek doesn't remember you, but it offers you the same bargain as yesterday. Labor for color, patience for maybe. The sky holds its breath. The camp exhales. You move because moving is what the living do. Today, like yesterday, there will be choices that look like pathways and turn out to be circles. There will be bread that is almost worth what it costs and kindness that costs nothing and feels like everything. There will be scales that tell the truth in a language designed to make you doubt. There will be ledgers that count only what the eye can see and not one of the things the heart keeps track of. The woman whose hand steadied while her partner shivered, the boy with the doctor's bucket and a businessman's patience, the stranger who tightened another stranger's bootlace with a joke so gentle it tied the world for a moment. You learn the town's math. Everyone counts something. The clerk counts coin. The baker counts loaves. The preacher counts souls, then converts them into listeners and sometimes into tenants. You count hours bent over water, scoops of gravel, glints that might be real. You count favors owed and favors granted, and you try to keep them in separate pockets so they don't complicate each other. By afternoon, you discover a new variable, your own breath, steady when you're thinking about the pan, rough when you're thinking about the tent, quiet when you're thinking about nothing at all. You try a new spot along the bank, under a willow whose branches write cursive on the surface. The mud here is soft and deceptive. It pretends to give way, and then holds on. Your pan takes a slower rhythm. The creek rewards you with a heavier sprinkle of color, still not riches, but more than hope's minimum payment. You let yourself smile because a day is easier to endure when it gives you permission. Back in town, a man argues with a woman over a handful of dust. His voice climbs a ladder and falls off the top. She answers in a tone that would soothe a skittish horse. He tires before she does. They weigh the dust again and agree that the scale has opinions. You learn a lesson without anyone teaching it. Sometimes fairness must be insisted upon, softly and repeatedly. You see the red scarf at a distance, negotiating for a length of rope and a promise of dry beans tomorrow. He catches your eye and tips an invisible hat. Between you is a small, unspoken ledger of trust, the kind that stays open without causing trouble. You wonder how long two people can hold that kind of balance in a place like this. You decide to find out. As the day leans toward evening, the weather changes its mind twice. Sun slides between cloud layers and paints the street with thin gold no one can spend. A fiddle tries again and discovers a tune worth keeping. Someone shakes a rug from a tent doorway, and dust joins the conversation like an old friend. If you listen closely, you can hear the town telling its own story. We are temporary, we are necessary, we are trying. You think about the title you carry into this day, California Gold Rush Survival Test. You wouldn't last a day, and you understand that the test isn't bravado, and it isn't cruelty. It's a question written in water. Could you give up warmth first, then privacy, then certainty, then the idea that hard work guarantees anything? Could you replace security with community, and pride with asking for help, and plans with patience? Could you set a pan in a creek and accept that the creek is the one in charge? You might. For a day. If you counted small mercies like currency, if you learned which scales to trust, if you borrowed one person's tune to carry you across the hour when your hands go numb. You could last until lantern light, until the last bread crust, until the decision you don't want appears and asks to be decided anyway. You could last because other people here are trying to last too, and together you can be more than one person's luck. Night edges in again. You pay your debt for the tent and the tools. It feels like taking a stone out of your pocket. You're still not rich. You're simply a little less burdened. The saloon door opens and releases a sunset of noise. A man tells a story that begins 3 towns ago and ends nowhere near the truth. Laughter doesn't ask the story for proof. You lie down in the dark with your coin counted and your hope uncounted. Your eyes close, open, close. Somewhere out there, the creek is making the same sound it made this morning and the morning before that, and long before any of this was ever named California. You roll onto your side and think of the willow's branches teaching the water to write. You think of the red scarf and the steady hands. You think of the scale's needle pausing as if it had a conscience, and you hope that tomorrow it pauses a little closer to mercy. Sleep is a frontier too. You cross it in pieces. The day you thought you couldn't last has lasted inside you, and it is still not done. It will leave with you when you go, tucked in the same place you used to tuck certainty. It will ride along beside you, humming a tune. Why? You wouldn't last a day, they say, and maybe they're right. But here, a day is longer than you think. It contains many smaller days. One for the cold, one for the hunger, one for the bargaining, one for the kindness you didn't expect and didn't deserve. If you can last one of those small days, you can last the next one. And if you can last enough of them in a row, you will wake one morning and discover that you are still here, poorer in comfort, richer in measures that scales can't weigh. Now, let the town recede. Let the lanterns soften to fireflies. Let the river become a lullaby you don't have to listen to all the way through. The work will be waiting when you return. The willow will practice its handwriting. The red scarf will hum a tune that knows how to find the next line. For now, you're allowed to stop counting. The saloon greets you with warmth and noise, the kind that rounds the edges off a cold day. You stand just inside the door long enough for your eyes to adjust, long enough to realize that what looks like chaos is actually rules, soft ones, lived-in ones. Voices stack and then separate. Laughter lifts and settles. Cards whisper against a table like leaves turning themselves over. You take a seat at the corner table, where the lamp burns low and the dealer's hat is as tired as the felt. You are not here to gamble. You are here to learn the temperature of the evening. A man with hands the size of shovels slides a coin forward, not to bet, but to buy a few minutes of belonging. A woman with soot on her sleeves keeps score for a game no one is winning on purpose. The dealer asks you if you're playing. You shake your head. Not tonight, you say. Everyone nods. Not tonight is a language the room speaks fluently. Stories move around the table and are shuffled back into silence when the door opens. You hear about a claim upriver that coughed up a nugget the size of a winter walnut, and about a mule that refuses to cross the same bridge twice on any day that ends in Y. You learn more from the parts that everyone leaves out, where the claim is not, how the bridge wobbles, why the teller's eyes don't quite match the color of his words. No one lies with malice. They just tell the version of things their day can live with. The red scarf finds the doorway, then finds you. He doesn't join the table. He leans against the wall and hums the last line of a hymn as if the line might change if he tries a different key. You lift your hand in a small salute. He tips his head once and vanishes into the next room where the lamp burns even lower because sometimes people need shadows to think. You step back into the street when the noise in the saloon becomes more comfort than you want to carry to bed. Rain has returned, the steady, unambitious kind that knows how to be everywhere at once. The lane runs shallow, with water. A lantern throws a warm square on the mud, and a cat patrols its edges as if light were a fence. You walk carefully because the ground has opinions and you'd like to remain on top of it. The creek is talking louder now. Even at a distance, you can hear the change in its tone. During the day, it asked for patience. At night, in rain, it asks for respect. You can feel the sound in your ribs before you reach the bank. The water moves faster, shoulders wider, the kind of motion that takes the straightest line through whatever argues with it. Tomorrow's work is being rearranged right now by a river that does not care about tomorrow. 2 figures stand under the willow you worked beneath, one with a lantern, one with a stick measuring the bank's edge. They mark the place where the water decides to be larger. You don't approach. You watch long enough to see the taller one point to a route that yesterday was a boundary, and tonight is a suggestion. You carry that knowledge back to your tent like it's fragile, because in a way it is. Inside the canvas, your corner is exactly as you left it, which feels like mercy. You loosen your boots without untying them all the way, a habit everyone here adopts by the end of the second night. Outside, a man argues gently with a spooked horse. The argument ends when the horse wins. You settle into your bedroll and let the rain practice its counting on the roof. Sleep arrives, leaves, arrives again, as if even rest needs to pan for something worth keeping. You dream of the scales needle pausing just right, of the pan catching a thin smile of light, of a ledger that balances in ways numbers don't usually allow. When you wake, it's to a quiet you don't trust at first. The rain stopped in the small hours. The camp is letting the silence confirm the news. You sit up and feel everything you carried yesterday: coin, caution, the shape of a stranger's kindness. You step into the cool dawn and find the world reset but not erased. The air is scrubbed, the lane a patchwork of shallow mirrors. Cooking smoke climbs politely. The cat from last night has claimed a dry crate as a throne. Breakfast costs less than last night's hunger and more than last year's memory. You eat it slowly the way people do, when speed would be waste. The red scarf appears with 2 tin cups and sets one near your elbow. Boil and beans, he explains. Won't win a prize, won't lose a day. You lift the cup and feel heat slip into your hands like advice that doesn't need to be written down. River jumped the bank, he says, not as a warning but as a headline. Moved silt. Made a mess. Might have made opportunity. He is not smiling, but there is room near his eyes where a smile could fit if invited. You both know the river's lesson. Destruction and rearrangement often arrive at the same address. Together you walk to the creek. The bend you worked yesterday has a new opinion of itself. The willow's roots are cleaner and more exposed, like bones after a hard climb. The water has cut a new path that looks temporary in the permanent way that rivers decide things. You try the pan where the flow slackens behind a spill of stones that weren't there before. The first 2 swirls are ordinary. The third is a small argument with luck that ends in your favor. The color in the bottom of your pan holds still long enough for a breath you didn't know you were holding to escape. You don't shout. You don't even smile the way you want to. You learn to let good news sit, to make sure it knows it's welcome without being chased. The red scarf nods once, a short ceremony. Work this seam, he says softly, as if the river can hear plans and objects on principle. Slow. Let it come to you. For an hour you practice deliberate patience. The sun lifts the chill out of your sleeves. Birds arrive in the willow and discuss the economy of worms. You measure your breaths by swirls, your hope by flecks that refuse to run away when the water pulls. Your poke grows heavier by amounts you can name. The red scarf moves a few yards downstream and hums, a signal that he is near without needing words. By late morning you've earned choices. Not many, but honest ones. You could sell a portion now and pay ahead on the tent, buy food that tastes like more than fuel, set aside a small stack of coin to blunt tomorrow's weather. Or you could hold everything and gamble on a larger rate at a counter that respects a heavier story. The risk is caution's shadow. The reward is security's neighbor. The decision is yours, which is both a privilege and a weight. You sit on a smooth rock and let the water argue with itself while you listen. The town makes its own case from across the lane, voices, hammers, a kettle lid chattering. You think of scales and ledgers and favor accounts that never truly close. You think of the fever that needed only a dipper and a steady hand. You think of how easily a single coin can become 3 meals or 1 mistake. In the end, you choose a middle path that the West rarely offers but occasionally allows. You and the red scarf pour a measured half of your combined dust into a small jar lined with waxed paper. You take it to a scale that has not lied to you yet, and even if it has, it did so politely. The rate is reasonable without pretending to be generous. Coin changes hands, and you change shape inside your jacket, a little taller, a little lighter. The other half goes back into the poke, a promise you make to yourselves about tomorrow that is neither reckless nor afraid. On the walk back, you notice details you were too tired to see yesterday: the rail of a porch smoothed by 100 elbows, A child's marble tucked into a crack in the boardwalk as if saving it for later. The way the sign, "Rooms by the Night," has been repainted over an older word you can just make out: hope. The town is a palimpsest, layers of meaning written over each other, until all that remains is the insistence to keep living. Afternoon tilts toward the golden hour that gave this place its name. The creek quiets into its regular voice, as if the storm's argument was a good stretch after a long sit. Your muscles agree. You work the seam until the light thins, stopping not because you're finished, but because you're learning that stopping is part of lasting. The red scarf rinses his pan and lets it drip dry. "Tomorrow," he says. The word has no guarantees stitched to it. It doesn't need them. Back in camp, you pay ahead on your corner of canvas. The owner looks surprised and then relieved in a way that suggests you are not the only person here making careful promises. You buy a small bag of coffee that tells the truth about itself and a heel of bread that will be better tomorrow toasted over embers. Supper tastes like progress, which isn't a flavor so much as an afterthought that makes swallowing easy. Night arrives clearer than the one before. Stars practice wholesomeness. The saloon's noise rides the air like a distant train that will never arrive. You lie down with your boots within reach and your decisions within reason. You don't count tonight. You don't need to. The day has already tallied what matters and put it in a ledger no clerk can touch. The sound of the creek learning a new song. The weight of a small jar that became 4 meals and 2 extra hours of sleep. The proof that help and pride can share a sentence without fighting. Here's the truth the title promised and the story delivered. Most people wouldn't last a day because a day here contains too many choices that don't feel like choices at all. Give up warmth or give up progress. Trade fairness for security or risk both for a better rate. Work while numb or wait while hungry. But if you learn to measure success in mercies, half a poke, a trusted scale, a song humming in the background, you can last the day. And if you can last a day, you can aim at 2. No one promises riches. The West rarely promises anything. It simply offers the chance to pay attention until attention becomes skill. Rest now. Let the lanterns shrink to coins, and the coins turn into sleep. The willow will hold your place in the morning. The red scarf will find the tune's next line. The river will argue with the stones and then, eventually, agree. Dawn returns like someone opening a door without knocking. The air has the clean taste that follows a night of honest cold. Somewhere a kettle clicks itself awake. You step out of the tent and into a town that looks new because your eyes are. The ground holds last night's footprints like pressed leaves. Smoke draws careful lines into the morning. The creek is already talking. You and the red scarf walk side by side without needing to discuss where you're going. The willow keeps its promise, leaning over the bank like a patient teacher. You feel the small weight of yesterday's coin and the lighter weight of knowing what to do first. Warm your hands, square your breath, set the pan, listen. Today the water is calm, but not lazy. The seam you found after the storm has not closed. It has softened into a groove that invites your rhythm. Scoop, swirl, tip. Tiny glints hold their ground. You don't celebrate, you repeat. The red scarf works downstream, humming the same 2-bar fragment as if he is sanding the edges off time. By mid-morning you've built yourself a quiet surplus, modest, real, enough to change what the afternoon can be. That's when temptation arrives, wearing good boots and a better smile. A man with a ribbon on his hat steps to the water's edge, like a visitor who has never been muddy. He introduces himself with a handshake that is practiced being memorable. "Opportunity," he says, as if it were a first name. He gestures toward a parcel upriver, where the bank splits into 3 polite paths. "Partners needed. I'm buying in small shares so the town benefits, not just the lucky few." The terms come smooth. Pooled dust today for a guaranteed payout by week's end. He shows a paper with figures that add up even if the math feels rehearsed. He compliments your technique the way salesmen compliment the weather, sincerely, briefly, strategically. You don't answer.
Not yet.
You let him talk while you finish your swirl, because you've learned that the creek teaches patience in every subject. The red scarf wanders up, not to rescue you. No one here is helpless, but to add a second pair of eyes to the equation. He listens the way carpenters listen to wood, tapping ideas, checking for hollows. The ribbon hat promises that his venture has a scale more honest than Sunday, the same phrase you've seen painted on boards around town, the same promise that turns out different depending on who's speaking. He says the payout will be in coin, clean, and quick. He says he takes only a modest percentage for his trouble, and he says modest in a tone that suggests he's on your side. You ask to see the scale. He leads you to a tent dressed like an office. Ledgers lined up like soldiers, a little brass bell, a counter polished by agreements. The scale is handsome and heavy. You notice the counterweights first, untarnished, unchipped, recently handled. The needle rests exactly at 0, the way a picture frame sits straight because someone just touched it. Test it, you ask. Of course, he says, magnanimous as a mayor. You pour a thimble of dust, the kind of sample too small for a cheat to bother with, and too telling for an honest scale to fear. The needle rises, then steadies a hair short of where your palm expected it to land. Not a lie. A habit. You watch the clerk's eyes, not his hands. His gaze flickers to the counterweights with the speed of someone checking the time. The red scarf clears his throat in a way that counts as a paragraph. You thank the man for the demonstration and say you'll think on it. He assures you the offer is brief because good things often are. He shakes your hand again, the same pressure, the same warmth, the same practiced exit. Back at the creek, you and the red scarf inventory the unspoken. The scale is close but not right. The payout promises are tidy, but tied to a ledger you don't get to hold. The venture might win. It might simply keep you busy while someone else wins. You could risk a portion and learn an expensive lesson slowly, or you could decline and learn nothing expensively fast. The safer path is the one you already started walking: small profits, honest work, a scale that you can look in the eye. So you decide, together, without ceremony, to pass. It feels like setting down a shiny rock that isn't gold. Near noon, you carry your morning's dust to the saloon scale, the one that has been the least theatrical about its honesty. The proprietor is in a mild mood, and mild is the best kind of honest. He wipes the plate with a cloth that has seen real use. The needle rises, hesitates, then lands where arithmetic and trust can shake hands. The rate is posted in chalk, and the chalk is dry. You accept the count. Coin meets your palm with the weight of good decisions. On your way out, you pass the ribbon hat again. He's talking to 3 men who look like they've slept less and hoped more. You catch his eye and give the smallest shake of your head. Not an argument, not a warning, just a signal that one person's answer doesn't need to be everyone's. He nods, as if new information is still information even when it says no. You buy coffee and a small coil of rope. The red scarf trades for beans and a needle strong enough to persuade canvas. Neither of you is stocking up like a winner. Both of you are preparing like people who plan to return tomorrow. There's a difference, and you can feel it in the way your shoulders carry themselves. Afternoon thins the light into a gentler color. You walk the edge of town to see whether the world beyond has changed shape. It hasn't, not really. Hills practicing distance, sky practicing patience, a road pretending to be a plan. You stop at a rise where you can see the creek's meander like a vein under skin. The red scarf speaks first, voice even. Dig in, he says, meaning stay. Work the seam while it's speaking. Slow. Careful. No promises except practice. Or move on. You answer, meaning try another camp, another rumor, another scale with a new accent. You stand inside the choice long enough to feel its weather. Moving on is a kind of hunger dressed as hope. Digging in is a kind of hope dressed as discipline. One is a bet on geography. The other is a bet on skill. Both can fail. Both can save you. You take a breath that belongs to this place. The willow, the wet boards, the distant hinge creak of the saloon's door. You think about the fever that eased under a stranger's hand, the half-poke turned into meals and sleep, the way the river, after anger, rearranged itself into opportunity. You hear the title of your story, the way a bell hears its own tone, California Gold Rush Survival Test. You wouldn't last a day, 1848 to 1855. Maybe most wouldn't. But a day can be learned. I'll stay, you say, and the red scarf nods as if he was waiting for your voice to catch up to your decision. Not forever. Not as a vow. Just long enough to see whether patience can be shaped into something that lasts. You return to the creek for one last pan before the light leaves the edges of things. The water accepts your tools like a friend who doesn't need small talk. Scoop, swirl, tip. The bottom of the pan brightens in modest ways, as if the river approves of reasonable choices. When you stand, your knees tell you you've lived 2 days in one body. That's all right. Bodies are built for that. Evening slides into its best version of itself. Clear, cool, honest. In the saloon, someone finds the right key, and the hymn finally discovers its second line. Cards talk softly and don't lie more than they have to. Outside, the cat from yesterday has expanded its kingdom to include one additional crate. You pay ahead for another night. The tent owner marks your name with a pencil that has been sharpened to a stubborn point. Good to have steady folks, she says, as if steadiness were a currency. Maybe it is. Supper is simple and right. You eat it slowly, thinking not about scarcity, but about the taste of enough. The red scarf tells you his given name, which you store in the same pocket as your better decisions. You say yours. A partnership isn't declared. It simply exists, like a footpath that appears because people keep walking the same honest line. When you lie down, you don't clutch the poke. It's near, but not under your ribs. Trust has shifted a few inches toward comfort. The canvas breathes with the wind. You hear the creek and recognize its voice from this morning and from long before you arrived. You fall asleep to the steady math of survival, a seam worked patiently, a scale chosen carefully, a choice made deliberately. Here's your ending, quiet and complete. You lasted the day because you let the day teach you what it was, instead of insisting it be something else. You traded spectacle for stamina, certainty for attention, and pride for community on the nights when it mattered. You left some offers on the table and took the ones that asked for work you could name. You learned where to stand, by the seam, by the honest scale, beside the person who hums a tune until it finds its next line. Tomorrow will come with its own exam. The West will grade you the way a river does. Pass/fail every day. But tonight, you've earned rest and the right to return. If most people wouldn't last a day, it's because a day here is made of 1,000 small, exact choices. You made enough of them in a row. Sleep. The willow is keeping your place. The creek remembers your rhythm. The town holds just enough light for you to find your way back in the morning.